Thanks to Peter for putting this event on. He's done a splendid job, I think you'll agree. I used to live in Edinburgh, so I was here for about 10 years, so it feels a bit like coming home in a weird kind of way. Although this building was actually a veterinary college at the time, so there's no sort of dissected animals anymore, unfortunately. But I'm pretty tired, actually. How many people... How many people have been around the corner to the Southern Bar? Show of hands. Quite a few of you. Is there some sort of sponsorship involved there? I'm not sure. But that bar used to be, that was the first bar I ever visited in Edinburgh, and that used to be a famous rock bar. It was the most famous rock bar in the whole of Edinburgh. And many years ago, a band called Nirvana played Edinburgh. It was back in about, showing my age now, I think it was around 93. And we were at the Southern Bar, and it was, it was suddenly packed with people. And the rumor was going around that Nirvana were going to play a live set in the Southern Bar, which was crazy, and we kind of... Problem was, you couldn't get a pint because there were so many people there. It was just impossible to get a beer, and it was just buzzing and crazy. I said, look, let's head round the corner of the pear tree, we'll get a beer there. And of course, 10 minutes later, Nirvana came on into the bar and played an amazing live set. Apparently, there's no mobile phones there. So what I always say is I was in the Southern Bar the night that Nirvana played. So I'm Mark Boas. I'm part of a company called Happy Worm Limited, half of it. My partner there, Big Mark, I call him. I'm just Mark. We registered the company about 12 years ago, just down the road, the company's house. And we've been playing about with lots of different technologies, but more recently, we've been playing about with media, audio and video. And we created a little library called JPlayer, which is, I'm pleased to say, has been adopted by quite a few people, and is open source, and it's been a great adventure. I mean, I looked at the stats the other day, and it was 5 million visitors, 3 million unique visitors since we launched the jplayer.org site, which is great. And the most important statistic is that there are almost 5,000 members of the community now. So we're really happy with that. And because we created this library, we started to experiment and get contracts actually in, which were related to audio and video. But when we started JPlayer, we were just concentrating on audio, and all we wanted to do was be able to create audio players in HTML, CSS, and sort of native web technologies. And there was nothing out there, so luckily Mark knew a bit of Flash, and this was before HTML5 audio came out. So he made this kind of Flash backend, if you want to call it that, and we just started from there. So we've always been interested in audio, and then we put the video in later. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to talk today about Hyperaudio, which is really a couple of things. It's going to be a kind of a high-level talk, so nothing too stressful. We're near the end of the event now. You can just kind of relax, and I'll show you a few demos. And talk about what we can do with Hyperaudio. The way I define Hyperaudio is that it's non-passive. If you think of the traditional audio in the web page, you've got a little player, you've got a play button, a pause button, you might have a progress bar or something, but really it's just kind of there. You press play, you sit back and you listen, you don't really interact so much. But with Hyperaudio, it's non-passive, it's more active. You can change, not only can you interact with the audio, but you can also change the audio. So it can be dynamically generated. And what I've been experimenting with, what me and Mark have been experimenting with, is integrating that more fully into the whole web experience, because there's a lot you can do. So what I say about Hyperaudio is, as hypertext is to text, Hyperaudio is to audio. So you think about text, clicking on text, and just what the web has done to text. That's what we're trying to do with Hyperaudio. But you could also just say it was audio on steroids. So why am I so fascinated by audio, apart from loving the music and missing Nirvana at the Southern Bar? I really think audio has a way to communicate with us that other media doesn't. For example, you can take in podcasts or whatever, or music, and it only requires kind of partial attention. So you can do that while you're driving or doing something else. It does tend to convey emotion well, especially music. And some of the most emotional things can be experienced from just listening to a bit of audio. And it kind of goes deeper. Now, I can't remember what I was thinking when I made this slide, but it's something to do with how the senses developed, you know? First of all, there was kind of the sense of smell and taste, and then there was some sort of detection of vibrations, and that became hearing, and then finally there was sight. But if you think about nostalgic moments in your life, you know, you might think of the visual elements, but also there's nothing like the smell of home-baked food, but the sounds of things to make you remember what a place was like, at least for me. So it has a very emotional feel, and it seems to be very deep-rooted. Okay, without further ado, I stumbled on a method of integrating audio more tightly into the web experience. About 2 years ago, I wanted to go to the Mozilla Festival, the first Mozilla Festival in Barcelona, and I created a demo for the science fair, and luckily they accepted it. So I'm going to show you how this all started. Just need to warm up a bit. So here you see text, and then we'll have the audio, and I'm going to try and link the two.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
Okay, so I was a little bit out there, but...
I am happy to join with you today, to join with you today, history.
So that that was my first ever play with something that I then started to realize was something further than just your usual audio experience. And there I just put JPlayer and some text, and I'm syncing it up myself. But already there we can kind of see that there's some use to that. You can click on the words, you can hear them spoken. So maybe if you're trying to learn a language or something, it's useful to be able to do that. And there's also another mode to this. Let me just start it.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
So you can kind of do sort of some artistic stuff as well. And I thought, you know, this is good, this is interesting, but it's not really doing much at the moment, but I can see the potential of this. And I gave this demo at the science fair, and a lot of people were interested in it. And so we kind of decided to take it further. Let me see. So what do we need to make audio interactive? Actually, it's not that complicated. I mean, there I'm setting the timing myself. But with the audio element, you can just set the audio playhead position, and you can also get that position. So with those two simple pieces of information and that mechanism, you can pretty much do what I just demonstrated there. But how do we represent the actual data? The way that I decided to represent it was by doing something as simple as I could possibly think of. And that was to represent it actually in HTML. And it wasn't really me that thought this format up, because there was a company that would transcribe stuff for you, and they had a kind of word level aligned format, and this is based on that. I'm using a data attribute there. You could just use T, but data T is more accessible. Unfortunately, it means if you have a large transcript, it's going to take up more space, but I think the trade-off is worth it just to make things accessible. All these slides, by the way, I'm going to put online later, so you'll see the odd link underneath, and that will allow you to find out more if you want to. So all we've got there is data t as the timing, so that could be the timing when hello is said, and in milliseconds or hundredths of a second, or however much you decide you want your granularity, you can decide on what that represents yourself. And you just have the word. And when you click on that, obviously with JavaScript, you can detect the data attribute and just go to the right bit of audio. So here's another demo. This is the next thing. I teamed up with Mozilla and Danish Radio to create a kind of demo. And I was also, at this point, I met somebody online who had coined the phrase Hyperaudio, didn't invent it at all, called Henrik Molk. And he's a Danish guy, and this is why I had this connection. And he really wanted to take this further. And so I had worked on this demo beforehand, and we saw that we had a common interest, so we made this demo. Now, this is a couple of years old as well, so the information is a bit out of date. We're talking about Firefox 4, if anyone can remember that. But basically...
Let's move on to the browser, the one on your computer, smartphone, and tablet. It's one of the most important tools in our everyday life. We use the browser to read news,
we can
watch
see
TV.
Here I'm using a library called Popcorn, which I'll talk a little bit about later, but we've got various things going on here. It's not just listening to audio in a normal player. We can also see the sentences going past. We can see extra information being put on there. And also down here,
Mozilla's Firefox has long been the book tickets.
We've got this thing that I kind of call the hypertranscript,
that used to be very popular was Google,
which is kind of useful.
Netscape, there were only minor niche projects like browser is still.
And we built in another thing where we could switch languages
Firefox har længe været en sikker toer.
on the fly.
Om ganske få dage kommer den officielle version 4 af Firefox-browseren ind.
So that was that demo, and that went down quite well. So what we learned from this is that once we create this hypertranscript, we make our audio, we break it right out of the black box, because you imagine trying to search for audio on the web, or even trying to get through a piece of audio to find that bit you heard the other day, you know, and then share that with somebody. All of these things are very difficult to do traditionally. By the way, navigable is a word. I know it doesn't look like a word, but yeah, is it navigatable? No, I looked it up, it is definitely a word. So it makes it navigable, searchable, and shareable. And navigable, I can't even say it now. Navigable, and just use something else. What else could I use? Means that you can navigate your way through a long script of audio, spoken audio, and find the bit you want straight away and kind of get a feel for it. You can look through a few pages. If you look through text, you get a feel for the content straight away. And it's the same once you transcribe audio. Searchable, I mean, once you know, the transcript at the end of the day can be picked up by search engines. And you can search through it yourself. You can say, you know, he was mentioning Firefox 4, I search for Firefox 4, and you get straight to it. And shareable, the fact that you have the timings now to only one piece of one word or several pieces of word. And I didn't show you, I forgot to show you on the other demo, but you could share an excerpt of that piece of audio. So it also makes it shareable. So that's quite, you know, that's some good wins there. Like I said just now, transcript can give you a very good idea of the content. We can scroll through the transcript and take the content in more easily. Much better than scrubbing through audio and video as we do today. Searchable. Just took you through that. And shareable. We also add, very importantly, social mechanisms. So you could share it over a tweet. You could say, this is the start and the end point. You know, you could quote the actual text that is being said and give the link straight to the audio. Somebody clicks on it and they listen to that bit of audio only. And that can be very powerful. We saw the language switching. Okay, I don't know how well I'm doing on timing, so I'm going to whiz through. This is a demo we did, the next demo we did for WNYC in New York, who do a series of programs called Radiolab. Has anybody heard of Radiolab? if anyone's a fan of radio, and I am, they just do some fantastic programs, and the way that they put their radio together is very clever. They use sound effects, and so we were very happy to be asked to do this. So let's just have a look at it. Oh, right there.
Oh, wait, you're listening?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
You're
Listening
to Radio Lab.
Radio
From
WNYC.
C
Yeah.
and NPR.
Hey, I'm Chad Abumrad.
I'm Robert Krulwich,
This is Radio Lab, and today we are desperately seeking symmetry.
and thus far we are failing
Desperately.
because maybe if we rejiggered our whole approach.
So
because symmetry,
what we did was we integrated with the SoundCloud API, and this is why I had to use Mark's Wi-Fi to get on, because I couldn't run this demo locally, because what happens is some of the comments that you see spread above the traditional SoundCloud squiggly line thing are actually the comments that we posted on, and they contain the URLs to the graphics that you see coming up. So we also use it as a content management system. Unfortunately, those URLs are kind of hard-coded, so couldn't run it locally. And the other bits are comments that people made on the program, and they kind of come up here. We've also used the timings to create something that we called a word river, which is the text coming down there, which is actually totally random. People read more into it than is actually there. There's nothing significant, although the colors do signify who's talking. And in the background, we put the transcript as well, but this time we highlighted it as it went along to give people an extra bit of information.
John, is that as a kid,
It's a weird thing when you click on the words, all the words bunched together. I actually blame Mark for that.
series of stinging humiliations like
So that was quite well received, and this is still 2 years ago, so we're going back a bit. All of this was achieved just with the sort of audio element. You know, HTML5 was just coming out, but we used JPlayer as well, and what JPlayer allows us to do is to fall back to Flash for browsers that didn't support HTML5, which in 2011 were many. But it does it in such a way that it's seamless. You know, the API is consistent, so we didn't really have to worry about it. And we used Popcorn again there. And I'll explain that in a minute. And here we go. So Popcorn, JPlayer, and jQuery. For all its sins, jQuery at the time was useful for us just to abstract over the differences. And what we're doing here actually is just making prototypes, we're just making demos. It's good, we can get stuff going quickly, so we were happy with that. JPlayer at the moment relies on jQuery as a jQuery plugin. Popcorn doesn't. Popcorn is very light, it's like 4K or something all zipped up. It's very modular. They've created a system where you can create plugins around it, but you obviously only use the plugins that you need. So you have like a YouTube plugin, a Vimeo plugin, you even have a Flickr plugin. And what it actually does is trigger events at certain times. That's all it really does, but it kind of keeps a handle of state. So if you rewind back through stuff, it kind of knows what was where, when. So that's really handy. Otherwise, you have to kind of write all that stuff yourself. There's a good active community. It's kind of a Mozilla project, and they've got Seneca College people working on it from Canada, and it doesn't need a specific library. And a great thing is that, to a certain extent, it is IE8 compatible. Now, IE8 is kind of the new IE6 when it comes to audio and, well, let's face it, a lot of things. And so that was very important. The problem is so many people are still using IE8. Thankfully, it's going down, and there's going to be regular updates, hopefully, on Windows. You never know. And JPlayer, like I mentioned before, is light, modular. It's skinnable. You can create your own skins. There's a big community. There's a Flash fallback built in, which actually means that it's IE6 compatible. So is Popcorn and JPlayer a winning combination? It could be. It's something that we've always used together. But when we want to support IE8 and have a Flash fallback, obviously, then we kind of have to use it. Although there's other ways you could get around that, you might as well use it. So let's go further with text. I'm just going to skip this one. But all I did here was kind of add a kind of search feature, so you could jump to a piece of text. So the elephant in the room, the question that most people ask is, okay, this is great, we've got transcripts, we've opened up the whole of audio, how the hell do we get these transcripts? Yeah, I mean, we can't just type this data in, we've got to get this data somehow. And there's a few answers. You know, you can use third-party services. There are services that do transcribe things right down to the word. They will do that. You will have to pay them for that privilege because it can't be completely automated. Although that's not true, because if you've got the transcript already and you've got the audio and you submit it, then they can kind of figure it out. But if you've got no audio at all, if you've got no transcript at all, then some human will have to be involved at some point. Or you could do it by hand if you're like a masochist and you really just think, oh, you know, it's only 5 minutes of audio, I'll get that done in the evening. I wouldn't recommend that. Or you could do both, so you could get a rough thing. There's open source software out there there's one called CMU Sphinx that will kind of do it for you, but it doesn't get it all right, so you'd have to tweak it afterwards. It just depends on your budget a little bit. And so some of the paid stuff, and I'm not really going to go through them, but there's a few. And then there's kind of freer stuff. So there's Amara that was formerly known as Universal Subtitles. So if you've got it in subtitle format, of course, you kind of know when the first word started and the 10th word started or ended. So you can kind of guess using a bit of JavaScript, and you could count the letters, you could count the vowels, you could do stuff like that and look at the punctuation even to kind of guess. And you'd be surprised how good that comes out. So that's one way of doing it. So you could use a tool. Amara allows you to do subtitles quite easily, but somebody might have already subtitled it. There's CMU Sphinx, as I spoke about, Shout Toolkit, and something that hasn't been made yet, which is something that I would like to make. So we talked about audio, Hyperaudio. I'm just saying that because the demos we've seen so far have been audio-based, but obviously video has its own audio soundtrack. So what if we apply that to video? So here's a demo we did much more recently, about a year ago or so, for Al Jazeera, and this was the presidential debates. I'm not sure it's going to just about fits on the screen. Okay. So again, you're starting to get used to this probably, but we've got the
second presidential debate at Town Hall, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Commission, nor the candidates have seen their answers concise and
so
on point.
You can see we've got that same experience there. We've also got the ability to search through the transcript now. So I could say economy, a little bit of D3 there, didn't know if anyone spotted that. And we can see all the incidences of where economy was said. So this is kind of in a news context. This went on aljazeera.com, and so people were interested in these talks, and so you could just skip to the economy. And the bit I like best, you can see there, you've got the share box. So there we're actually sharing the keywords. So you can say, wasn't it funny how many times he said economy, or whatever the stupid things that they were saying were, or I can't even remember all the good ones now. But I'll just give you a quick demo of what that would look like. So
I just want to point out that when Governor Romney's campaign was asked about the Lilly Ledbetter bill.
Okay, so I put an Easter egg in. I didn't tell anybody. Well, I did. I kind of tweeted it. Only I knew the secret. Well, me and Mark. And it was that I could not only show them all the times that they said economy, but also play back all the times they said economy. The idea was for it to go viral. It didn't really, but... So let's see if I got the parameters right.
It's economy going. Economy. It's not.
The economy was on the verge. An economy that is economy, and it will be good for the economy. The economy is when you get the economy.
There's a really good bit
The
coming.
economy is when we make economy. An economy that's thriving.
It's economy going again. It's economy going again. Economy. The economy. I'm going to bring economy. So the economy work. The economy looks like the economy with 7-point economy. The economy with economy. And an economy with economy.
Looks like, does anyone remember Max Headroom?
An economy is when the economy forward.
The economy working again. The economy.
So does anyone want to give me a word? Should we try one? Sorry? We'll try. I'm just going to shove it in the URL.
taxes. Taxes? Taxes on that, because the taxes.
There's a lot of
Taxes
taxes.
on the middle class, taxes on the middle class.
So the idea is to look as well.
Taxes has been simple. Taxes for middle class. Taxes
for wealthy people. Taxes for mid.
taxes.
A lot of taxes down.
Taxes for middle class. Taxes for small business.
For taxes.
Taxes. Taxes, but don't make.
And you can actually, there's another parameter which is something like L equals 1, and it's just a loop. So if you find like a key phrase that's particularly funny, you can just get them to say it continually. It's a bit like an animated GIF. Yeah. So that was quite good. I mean, you know, it got a few hits, but that was partly because it was on Al Jazeera. And I really hoped that there would be something amazingly funny that would just go hugely viral, but it didn't really happen. I don't think I have enough followers to get that sort of traction. But this was the next stage, and it was to create something that spanned more than one talk. And so this is the State of the Union. And again, I'll just do the boring old economy one. But what we did next was we allowed people to search through all the different debates that or speeches that Obama had made of the State of the Union, so they could compare. You know, I think a good one is terrorism because, or even war on terrorism, I'm not sure. Because that's kind of, I don't know if they say that anymore. No, maybe that wasn't ever said. Oh, it's the State of the Union, so maybe it doesn't say it. So apparently only in 2009. Okay, that was a bit of a letdown. But, you know, the idea is that you can go through, and we also had some of the things already set up so people could go and have a look at. And then you could compare with the other years. Okay, so we took that as far as, I think we've taken that quite far. What else can we do? So I had this idea. I was sitting on the balcony one evening. I live in Italy, so it gets quite hot in the evening, so I have this excuse that I'll go out on the balcony and have a gin and tonic at the end of the day and kind of think about things. And it came to me that it's better to do it in the evening rather than in the middle of the day, I found, just work-wise. But although it's very tempting, when we synchronize audio with text, if we synchronize audio with text, can we not then manipulate it the same way that we manipulate text? I thought that night and tried not to forget it. And so I came up with this idea of a Hyperaudio pad, which would be like a kind of a word processor that would allow you to kind of assemble media from its underlying transcript. So you could kind of copy and paste the text over, and that would take the media kind of with it, and that would just be an amazing thing because, I don't know why, because it just sounds great. So I had to make it, and eventually we kind of did. So here's a demo. This may go wrong because this is kind of alpha or pre-alpha, whatever that might be, software. It's not even going to fit on the screen, I realize now. But it's weird this because I should actually try it in Firefox. Let me just get the URL. For some reason, and we don't know, I'm not accusing anybody, but in Chrome, it works with the developer tools thing open, but not with it closed. And I suspect that's something to do with caching, but it kind of should work, but it works fine on Firefox. He says. So I had to put this note in, but it's very early days. So what we have down the side is this kind of library. The idea is to have a library of media that we can just reference. So this is a program from Al Jazeera. Good thing about Al Jazeera is, and the reason that I've got this connection with Al Jazeera is I was a Knight Mozilla-sponsored fellow for Al Jazeera to go into newsrooms, open up the news, and there was like 5 of us, some of us with The Guardian, BBC. I got Al Jazeera, which was fine. Talking about hot, at 50 degrees in Doha, you know, they say that they run to the cars. I can't work it out. Why would you run anywhere in 50 degrees? But apparently it's so hot that, you know, they must have a remote control somewhere to turn the cars on with, you know, run into the cars, 50 degrees. So anyway, So here we have.
generation of Indians is using unconventional methods to defend itself
This is a
against
brilliant image,
those
by the
who are
way.
exploiting the rainforest. Gangs of woodcutters
There's like a
that
man,
are
I don't know if you
invading
saw
their
that.
territory illegally. The region of the Ashaninka, the brothers of the people.
It's a man on a canoe with a laptop. How cool is that?
A new generation of Indians is using
He fell over.
unconventional methods to defend
So,
itself against those.
The
who
idea
are
with this is
exploiting
that I've got 3 programs there, 3 documentaries from Al Jazeera, and I want to mix them. So I'm going to have to use my mouse. I'm not very good. So I can choose, I can choose a bit. So let's try and highlight this. And that then goes over to the right-hand side. Unfortunately, can't see it all. I didn't think about this. I don't know if I reduce the text size, I can get away with it. Oh, that's great. And now, if we click on
fresh
here,
honey from their own beehive. All the families in the village grow, hunt, or collect almost everything they need for their own survival.
so I've now put that bit of media on the right-hand side simply by selecting a bit of text, as opposed to the more, keep using the word traditional, but the way that people are doing it currently with a video editor where, there's ways of doing it and it's not too bad, but you really have to kind of get used to the video editor. Whereas this, everyone kind of knows how to copy and paste text. So what happens if I want to then, the idea is that you build up your own program. And the interesting thing is here that nothing is kind of destroyed. We're just pointing to end and start times. So we're not really cutting, we're just kind of referencing. So again, I'll just choose something by random. So now,
Almost everything they need for their own survival. Rafaela is looking for an illegal tin mine, which is reported to be hidden under a canopy of leaves at a river.
so there you can see I'm already kind of assembling my media. But then I thought, what do we need to make this kind of compete with, proper video editors? We need kind of transitions between the media. Wouldn't it be cool if I could kind of type in my transition? So this whole area on the right is editable, it's content editable. So I thought, well, start with a fade. But let's make it so it's kind of human readable, because I want this bit over here to be kind of the source to the media, like you would view source to a web page, but I want it to be readable by anybody, a script maker. It's kind of a script, right? So you read a script of a film, you understand what's going on. So fade through green over 1 second.
Their own survival.
Fingers crossed.
Rafaela is looking for an illegal tin mine, which is reported.
So there we
to be
created a
hidden under
fade.
canopy of
And then I
leaves at a
kind of
river.
thought, well, that's a fade, but can we do other stuff? And I found this library called seriously.js. I don't know if anybody's seen this. If anybody uses video and Canvas together to manipulate the video, there's a guy called Brian Charles, and he has created this fantastic library called seriously.js. So I thought, why not just use that? And so we tried it, and we created the effects. I think you can put the words in different order. I've kind of got the Italian spin on that. Apply effect sepia. Let's see if it works.
Survival. Rafaela is looking for an illegal tin
So now we've applied a sepia effect. So already we're trying to build things up. But the great thing about this library, and I take no credit for it at all, is that I think it's something called compositing, but it means that you can add stuff on top of each other. So there's a great effect called TV glitch.
Survival. Rafaela is looking for an illegal tin mine.
So there we have a TV glitch. And, it's amazing what you can do with video when you manipulate it with Canvas. And I'm just going to put one more effect because I can't resist. I think it's called night vision.
Survival. Rafaela is looking for an illegal tin mine, which is reported.
So there you have it. So that's how far we've got so far. And on the back of this demo, what we decided to do was maybe go to get some funding and kind of make this a real thing. And we thought it would be a great non-profit, and so we've set up Hyperaudio Incorporated as a non-profit at the moment, and hopefully we'll get some funding soon. And I'll show you why we want to do that. So let me just talk quickly about the Hyperaudio pad. How much time have I got left? Must be getting to the 10 minutes. Create audio, video programs easily. Well, that's the idea. The idea is that you could create this easily. So it's very intuitive. You could maybe even do it on your mobile phone. You could do it in a war zone. You could put media together. Each program itself comes with a hyper transcript. So it comes with a source. And it's kind of, allows you to do not only sort of what I call subtractive remixing, where each remix is always smaller than the one before it. It allows you to peel back and see what the context was, and, you know, so you could remix a remix, and in theory, this is what we want to make, we haven't made yet, you would be able to remix something that was actually bigger than the original, which I call additive remixing. So you can remix the remixes, and the programs come with source intact. So what we're trying to do is promote media literacy. Like when you look at the source, you should be able to kind of tell what's going on. And anyone can kind of do it. It's kind of fun. And I just think it's a new way of putting stuff together, and I think it's worth doing. So like citizen journalism, if somebody really wants to make something quickly, they're on the ground and they somehow have a way to get stuff transcribed quickly, they can put stuff together quickly. Mainstream journalism, working with people like Al Jazeera, they're always in a huge rush. If they can just put stuff together quickly and even allow other people to remix it, then that's great. People who make serious programs and they just want to do a prototype first cut, when they're using the traditional stuff, then it's a bit of a pain to do it, move stuff about. But with this, you can just edit things really quickly and see how they come up. And just sort of casual mashups and arty stuff, you know? So the idea is to create a whole ecosystem, so that a loosely coupled system, and the audio pad's in the middle, but you can use any of these pieces independently. And so the idea is a transcript maker will create as best it can a word-aligned transcript for you, and you might pull that into the transcript cleaner and clean it up a bit, and that should be quite intuitive. Transcript converter that will take subtitles from YouTube, Amara, Internet Archive now doing a lot of work with subtitles. By law in the US, you have to subtitle your content, any content that goes out, and you can pull that out of the actual signal. And if people really want to, because we're not living in a perfect gigabit, Ethernet, whatever world, that they can publish it and it would be just one file. But to be honest, I'm not so keen on that bit, because it's like, at that point it's compiled, you can't go back. Whereas I like the approach that you're just seeing little bits that you can always change and find out how it's done. Okay, so in the last 10 minutes I'm going to talk about something completely different. I've just gone down this massive rabbit hole and been talking about transcripts and what we can do with that. But what about other stuff we can do with audio? You talked a lot about speech to text. What about text to speech? Has anyone seen speak.js? Yeah? It's pretty cool. I'm not going to show you this demo, but I do recommend you go home, especially if you're in the UK, and try this out. I'm going to give you a bit of a spoiler. The content changes depending on a few variables. So we're dynamically creating the content. And what we're also doing, which I'm going to talk about briefly in a minute, is we're using something called the Web Audio API, which is why it works better in Chrome, unfortunately. It does work in Firefox, but it doesn't have all the sort of echo effects and stuff. But basically, we got a load of samples from the BBC, and the BBC are brilliant at making radio plays, so we got some top-class content. And we added the effects dynamically. And it's about somebody being sort of going into a lift, so there's echoes and stuff. Anyway, I really recommend you try that out. It works better in the UK because it does some geolocation stuff. So the idea is that depending on where you are in the world, the content will come out differently. And this is something that the BBC R&D department called Perceptive Media. So dynamically generated audio. I didn't actually show you this. But Speak.js, I'm not going to show you it. Yeah, I am. Because it's quick. We can do stuff like this.
Never gonna give you up.
Okay, it's it's not brilliant, okay, but if you're ever needing to create a robot-type voice, it's perfect. Which, funnily enough, we have a robot in our play, so that worked out quite well. So how does this work? So I was going to view the source, but I can't really be bothered at this point. But if you look at the source code, you'll see that it actively generates a WAV file. And it kind of, I think it's base 64 encoded, and it just slaps it into the audio source. So at that point, you can dynamically create, is that right, Mark? You're looking at me strangely. You're not about to heckle me, are you? I think it's like that. Well, it's not base 64 encoded. UTF-8. Do you want to come up and do? You're really tempting me to go and look at the source, Mark. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. So there was always that option. So libraries like SpeakJS can generate audio on the fly. It's a bit slow. There's latency involved. It's not brilliant. It's a kind of a hack, but it's a cool hack. But advanced audio APIs allow real-time effects, and standards for future audio are being forged. The Web Audio API is a high-level JavaScript API for processing and synthesizing audio in web applications. It kind of takes a node-based approach. Each node performs a function. So this would be this could be seen as a crossfade, for example. So you've got a gain node, two gain nodes, a destination, and one gain node could go down, the other one could go up, you got a crossfade. I have no idea at all what this does. I haven't got a clue, but people who understand audio right down to, I mean, you could understand, a convolution is adding kind of an echo or a reverb, so, you know, it is understandable, it just looks complicated. But it can be as complicated or as simple as you want, but it's worth checking out. And the great thing about this is that it is a web standard or a draft standard. Chrome have it now, so does Safari, even on mobile. Firefox 24 will have it, so already we're covering quite a lot of the bases. Opera, moving to Blink, I assume will take that, Blink being a fork of WebKit and this being part of WebKit, will take it as well. Internet Explorer, fingers crossed. So let's have a quick look and see what we can do with this. So this is just displaying audio, okay? You're not actually changing the audio, but it's surprisingly not that hard to do. I mean, a guy that wrote this is a great, I don't know if anyone knows Acco.net, he's done some great demos, so he knows what he's doing. I think he used 3JS, the 3D library. But it's just so cool, you know? You can react to audio. And this is something that I talked about at the start, breaking it out of its black box. Yeah, so follow this guy Unconed, go to this site because he's got loads of cool stuff on there. So what's around the corner? Just wrapping up. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of WebRTC. WebRTC is, in my opinion, one of the most disruptive web technologies that there is. Not only does it allow you to kind of, as people have hinted at before, bypass the comms companies and so on, the networks, and allow you to create connections from one peer to another, so P2P, streaming of audio and video between you. But it also has a data side to it, so you can transmit data in a P2P way, so it's very distributed, and it's pretty damn cool. It's supported now, at least in Firefox and Chrome. It's getting there. I mean, we're at a point with audio now that things are really beginning to happen. And obviously a big part of that is the audio side. So there's the media stream API, the peer connection API that allows you to connect to the peers, and the data channel. You can figure out what it's good for. It also contains something that's very interesting. I haven't really talked about codecs, it's a bit of a mess, but there's an Opus audio codec, which is part of the WebRTC standard. So hopefully all the browsers will adopt it. And it is a very advanced codec. It's actually made up of different codecs, so it kind of takes one that's similar to the Skype codec for speech, and then a different one, I think it's SIGF, for high quality audio. So it has all these great things about it. Narrowband, full band, bit rate can change from variable to constant, and just it's robust and it's great. I wanted to mention live streaming. Mark's done a lot of research. If you want to find out anything about audio and video, talk to Mark, because he's really the guy that's on top of it at the moment. But he's done a lot of work on it recently, and this is just a few tips that you can go and look at later if you're interested in doing live streaming. Live streaming as opposed to, so live streaming is like when you listen to the radio and it's coming through your computer, so it's live from the source straight to you. There's a few tips there. There's a new thing coming out called media fragments as well, which is very exciting to me, which is that you can specify a spatial dimension, and it's nothing to do with audio, but I might as well mention it, of the video. So you can say, I just want to watch this little bit. So you can do all sorts of cool stuff with that. And kind of time-based dimension, so you can say, finally, I just want to see from, I don't know how many people use YouTube and sometimes share a bit. You can kind of say the start time, you can't say the end time. Should be easy, right? And it is with media fragments. And the idea also with that is to just bring back the part that you need. So don't buffer the whole lot right up into time 9 or whatever. And you can also split the audio off the video. You can say, I just want to listen to the audio, which is great, because I don't know if you've noticed, they've got nearly all the music in the world on YouTube. Yeah. And there's a web speech API, which is controversial, and actually I'm a bit weird about it, but it's an API for speech-based input, so it's a bit like Siri and all that. Currently Chrome only, and it's server-based, which is just weird, right? But it's kind of cool. I'm not going to do the demo. Another thing to know is that mobile is getting better. But watch out for the older mobile browsers. Mobile is different when it comes to media in general. It doesn't let you do things like autoplay. It has to be a user-initiated action or something. They don't really like you to change the volume. The reasons for this is because they don't know what data plan you've got and stuff, and then mobile devices have their own volume controls and things, and they made these decisions, and so you may not be able to play simultaneous audio, which is a nightmare, because how are you meant to program games? Luckily, Web Audio API to the rescue will allow you to do that now, but we have to see the adoption in Android as well, because that's in iOS 6. And you've got older browsers as well, so that's to think about. It might not preload, so if you're trying to kind of buffer things, you have trouble playing stuff immediately when you want to sometimes. So an important thing to do is to look at the stats with web native audio. I don't know what to call, should it be HTML5 audio? Probably, because web native could include Flash, and I'm not including Flash here. But what you can see here that in the last 3 years at least, this stat has changed quite significantly. And the problem really is IE8. And that percentage is getting smaller. All the other browsers kind of pretty much support it. And, there's mixed support as well, which is that very small segment of purple. But you can see now that it's about time, if you're thinking ahead, you can start to use web native audio and not even worry about the Flash part. So all I wanted to say in this talk is show you a few different demos, what is possible. I hope that some of you will maybe play about with audio. It's very well supported. Future audio APIs are going to be supported very soon, and that's when you'll start to be able to do the really cool stuff. And also, here are some resources. Again, I'll put this up online so you can all go there and read up a bit more about it. But, it's just such an exciting time to be playing about with media in general. I really recommend you do it, even if it's just as a hobby. So that's about it, really. Thanks for listening. I'm Mark Boas, Mark Panagerson, my colleague there. The project that you saw before with the transcripts and the Hyperaudio pad, that is Hyperaudio. And we've got a website, and hopefully we're going to get funding. We've got a Hyperaudio Google group. If anyone wants to get involved, now's the time. If you want to get involved with a non-profit doing cool stuff, or you've got anything to say or contribute. jplayer.org if you want to use something that has a Flash fallback. and allows you to skin your player. And we're Happy Worm. Thanks very much.